Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 6. We'll present our mind map consists of topic 10 until topic 12. I'm Azrin Afiza binti Azahari and my group members consist of Muhammad Alif Amirul bin Azmi, Nurul Izzatul Radiah binti Muhammad Som, Nur Amirah binti Rafi and Nur Suhadas Shakila binti Ahmad Baya. Topic 10 is about leadership. Leadership is about influencing, motivating, and enabling others to contribute toward the effectiveness and success of the organization which they are members. Leadership can motivate others through persuasion and others influence tactics. Then, leadership share means the former leaders are responsible for leading others and delegate power. However, they also take steps to encourage the employee to take initiative and risk without fear of fail. Besides that, share leadership also call for collaborative rather than the internally competitive culture. For example, learning orientation culture. There are five perspectives of leadership, such as competency perspective, behavioral model, contingency model, transformational perspective, and implicit leadership perspective. Next, I will pass to the Swada.
Thank you. I will continue to explain about perspective of leadership, which is competency perspective. This approach focuses on the traits and competency of great leader. The competency perspective seeks to identify a set of abilities, values, personality traits, and other characteristics that make the leader successful. As you guys can see, there are 8 leadership attributes. First one is personality. Effective leader must have a higher level of extraversion and conscientiousness, which with higher extraversion, leader will be more comfortable with their influential role in social setting, and with higher conscientiousness, effective leadership will be careful and disciplined to fulfill work obligations. Second is self-concept. Effective leaders have a strong self-belief and a positive self-evaluation about their own leadership skill and ability to achieve objectives. Next is drive. As a good leader, they must typically have a high need for success. As for integrity, leaders must tell the truth and keep their word to build trust with their followers. Next is leadership's motivation. Leaders also have a strong need for authorities and control so that they can influence others to achieve organizational goals. Next is knowledge of the business. Leaders need to understand the business to capitalize on any opportunities or to mitigate any threats. For an example, they can possess a knowledge of industry and other technical master. For cognitive and practical intelligence, effective leaders have above average cognitive ability to process information and ability to solve real-world problems by adapting to shaping or selecting appropriate environment. Last is emotional intelligence. It is referred to the ability to monitor one's own and other feeling and emotion, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one thinking and action. It can be shown by leaders that have the ability to recognize and regulate their own emotion and the emotion of the others. The behavioral perspective emphasizes the belief that leadership is more about what the leader does than what trait he has. Hence, the behavioral approach seeks to identify behavior which make the leaders effective. According to the behavioral theories, the two behaviors that influence leadership effectiveness are task-oriented and people-oriented. Task-oriented leaderships include behavior that defines and structures work roles. It assigns employees to specific tasks, sets goals and deadlines, clarify work duties and procedures, provide feedback on work quality, and plan work activities. People-oriented leadership includes behaviors as listening to employees for their opinion and ideas, creating a pleasant physical work environment, showing interest in staff, appreciating employees for their contributions, and showing consideration of employee needs. These early studies tried to find out whether effective managers are more task-oriented or more people-oriented. This proved to be a difficult question to answer because each style has an advantage and disadvantage.
Now we go to the Path-Go leadership style. This model specifically highlights 4 leadership styles and several contingency factors leading to 3 indicators of leader effectiveness. The 4 leadership styles consist of directive, supportive, participative, and achievement-oriented. Firstly, directive. Directive leadership is the same as task-oriented leadership. This leadership consists of clarifying behaviors that provide a psychological structure for subordinates. It includes clarifying performance goals, the means to reach those goals, and the standard against which performance will be judged. Directive leadership also includes judicious use of rewards and disciplinary actions. An example of directive is the leader tells to the member how to perform their tasks, as well as scheduling and coordinating work. So it is most effectiveness when people are unsure about the task or when there is a lot of uncertainty within the environment. Second, supportive. This style provides psychological support for subordinates. The leader is friendly towards subordinates and displays personal concern for their needs, welfare, and well-being. This style is the same as people-oriented leadership. It is most effective in situations in which tasks and relationships are physically and psychologically challenging. Third, participative. Participative leadership encourages and facilitates employee involvement in decisions beyond their normal work activities. The leader believes in group decision making and shares information with subordinates. He consults his subordinates on important decisions related to work, task goals, and paths to resolve goals, such as asking for opinions and suggestions, encouraging participation in decision making, and meeting with subordinates in their workplace. It is more effective when subordinates are highly trained and involved in their work. And lastly, achievement oriented. Achievement-oriented encourage peak performance through goal setting and positive self-fulfilling prophecy. This leadership style emphasizes behavior that encourage employees to reach their peak performance. The leader set challenging goals, expect employees to perform at their highest level, continuously seek improvement in employees' performance, and shows a high degree of confidence that employees will assume responsibility and accomplish challenging goals. Next, Path-Go leadership model. The 4 leadership style will be more effective in some situations than in others. The Path-Go leadership model specifies 2 sets of situational variables such as employees' contingencies and environmental contingencies. The relationship between a leader's style and effectiveness is dependent on the following variables. First, employee contingencies. Employee contingencies include factors such as skill and experience as well as locus of control. Skill and experience. For inexperienced and unskilled employees, a combination of directive and supportive leadership is best. Directive leadership instructs subordinates on how to complete the tasks, whereas supportive leadership assists them in dealing with the uncertainties of unfamiliar work situations. When employees are skilled and experienced, directive leadership is detrimental because it introduces too much supervisory control. So it follows a high inability, a directive style of leadership unnecessary. Instead, a supportive approach may be preferable. Second, locus of control. Individuals who have an internal locus of control believe they have control over the work environment. As a result, these employees prefer participative and achievement-oriented leadership style. On the other hand, people with an external locus of control, they believe that their performance is more dependent on luck and fate, so they are more satisfied with directive and supportive leadership.
Second, environmental contingencies. Environmental contingencies include factors such as task structure and team dynamic that are outside the control of the employee. These include factors such as task structure and team dynamic that are outside the control of the employee. For example, for employees performing simple and routine tasks, a supportive style is much effective than a directive one. Similarly, the participative style works much better for non-routine tasks than routine ones. When team cohesiveness is low, a supportive leadership style must be used, whereas in a situation where performance-oriented team norms exist, a directive style or possibly an achievement-oriented style work better. Leaders should apply directive style to counteract team norms that oppose the team's formal objective. Okay, next we go transformational versus transactional leaders. Transactional leaders. Transactional leaders style follow a managerial philosophy of reinforcement and exchange, managing employees by establishing specific goals and then offering a reward for achieving them. Effective transactional leaders recognize and reward followers' accomplishment in timely way. Transactional leaders are often found in manufacturing, where line workers are expected to hit a set production quota per shift. Another area where a transactional mindset is beneficial is sales, as the team and individual members are driving to hit specific sales goals. Next, transformational leaders. Transformational leadership views leaders as change agents. They create, communicate, and model a shared vision for the team or organization. They encourage experimentation so employees find a better path to the future. Transformational leaders emphasize personal and professional growth and encourage all employees to think creatively and developing solutions to long-standing challenges. Next are transformational leadership elements. There are several models of transformational leadership, but 4 elements are common throughout. Most of them represent the core concept of this leadership perspective. These 4 elements are create and communicate a strategic vision, model the vision, and build commitment to the vision. They create a strategic vision and communicate the vision. A vision is a positive image or model of the future that energizes and unifies employees. An effective strategic vision has several identifiable features. It refers to an idealized future with a higher purpose. This purpose is associated with personal values that directly or indirectly fulfill the needs of multiple stakeholders. A value-based vision is particularly meaningful and appealing to employees, which energize them to strive for that ideal. The strategic vision effectiveness depends on how leaders convey it to followers and other stakeholders. Effective transformational leaders generate meaning and motivation in followers by relying on symbols, metaphors, stories, and other vehicles that transcend plain language. Transformational leaders also communicate the vision with humility, sincerity, and a level of passion that reflect their personal belief in the vision and optimism that employees can success. The second model, the vision. Transformational leaders not only talk about vision, but they also talk by stepping out of the executive suite and doing things that symbolize their vision. Modeling the vision is important because they legitimize and demonstrate what the vision looks like in practice. Modeling is also important because it builds employee trust in the leader. The greater the consistency between the leader's words and actions, the more employees will believe in and be willing to follow the leader. Third, build commitment toward the vision. Transforming a vision into reality necessitates employee commitment, which transformational leaders foster in a variety of ways. Their words, symbols, and stories have the power to energize people, to inspire them, to adopt the vision as their own. Leaders show a can-do attitude by acting and behaving in accordance with their vision. This consistency projects an image of honesty and integrity. Transformational versus charismatic leaders. Charisma is personal trait or relational quality that provide a real power over followers, whereas transformational leadership is a set of behavior that engage followers toward a better future. Transformational leadership motivates followers through behavior that persuade and earn trust, whereas charismatic leadership motivate our followers directly through the leader inherent referral power. For instance, communicating an inspiring vision is a transformational leadership behavior that motivates followers to strive for that vision. This motivational effect exists separate from the leader charismatic appeal. If the leader is highly charismatic, however, his or her charisma will amplify follower motivation. Evaluating of the transformational leadership. Transformational leaders are subordinate, are more satisfied, and have a higher effective organizational commitment under his leadership under his leadership. In addition, they also perform their duties better, engage in more organizational citizenship behavior, and make better or more creative decisions. Transformational leadership is now the most popular leadership perspective. However, it faces some challenges. For example, some models are involved in curricular logic. Some transformational leadership theories combine leader behavior with leader personal characteristics, and transformational leadership is usually described as universal concept that is, it should be used in all situations. Implicit leadership perspective. Implicit leadership theory explains that followers' perception also play a role in a leader's effectiveness. The implicit leadership perspective has two components such as leader prototypes and the romance of leadership effect. Leader prototypes preconceived image of effective leader used to evaluate leader effectiveness. This prototype, which developed through socialization within the family and society, shapes the followers' expectations and acceptance of others as leaders. These expectations and affirmation influence the employee's willingness to be a follower. Leadership prototypes not only support a person's role as leader, they also influence our perception of the leader's effectiveness. In other words, leaders are often perceived as more effective when they look and act consistently with observable prototype of a leader. Romance of leadership effect. In addition to relying on implicit prototypes of effective leaders, followers tend to exaggerate leaders' perceived influence on the organization's success. This romance of leadership effect exists because most people want to believe that leaders make a difference. Amplified effect of leaders on organizational result, which is fundamental attribution error tendency to give credit or blame for the company's success or failures because employees do not readily see the external forces also influence this event. Cross-cultural issues in leadership. Firstly, societal cultural values and practice affect leadership, shape leaders' values or norms, influence decisions and actions, and shape follower prototype of effective leaders. Secondly, some leadership styles are universal, others differ across cultures. Charismatic visionary seem to be universal, and participative leadership works better in some cultures than others. And lastly, gender issues in leadership. Male and female leaders have similar tasks and people-oriented leadership. Participative leadership style is issued more often by female leaders because women more engaged with the people. Lastly, evaluating female leaders are still receive negative evaluations as leaders due to prototypes and gender stereotypes. We in society still perceive that men as a leader too. This can be chosen by the evidence that women are good in emerging leadership styles such as teamwork and coaching, as well as empowering employees.
Okay, the topic 12 is organization culture. The introduction is the basic pattern of shared value and assumption governing the way employee within an organization think about and act on problem and opportunity. An element of organizational culture is divided by two: organizational culture and artifact of organizational culture. In organizational culture, that's contain physical structure, language, rituals and ceremony, stories and legend. While in artifact of organizational culture, that's contain share and value, means conscious belief, evaluate what is good or bad, right or wrong. And share assumption and conscious taken for granted belief imply mental model ideal prototype of behavior. Organizational culture profile, the dimension and its characteristic. Innovation is experimenting, opportunity seeking, risk taking, few rule, and low costness. Stability is predictability, security, rule oriented. Respect for people is fairness and tolerance. Outcome orientation is action oriented. High expectation and result oriented. Attention to detail is precise and analytic. Team orientation is collaboration and people oriented. Lastly, aggressiveness is competitive, low emphasis on social responsibility. The next subtopic is artifact in organizational culture. The first artifact, story and legend. Social prescription of desire and desired behavior provides a realistic human side to expectation. Most effective story and legend is on describe real people, assumed to be true, known throughout the organization, area prescriptive. The next, ritual and ceremony. Ritual is program routine. Example, how visitors are greeted. Ceremony is planned activity for an audience. Example, award ceremony. Organizational language is word used to address people, describe customer. Leader use phrase and special vocabulary as cultural symbol. Language also found in subcultures. Lastly, physical structure or symbol. Building structure like may shape and reflect culture. Office design convey cultural meaning. Furniture, office side, wall hanging. In organizational subculture, we can see at dominant culture, most widely share value and assumption consistently by organization member. It's supported by senior management, but it can also contribute until their desire for another culture. Subculture, located throughout the organization according to division, geographic region and occupational group, can enhance or oppose counter culture, films dominant culture. Two function or counter cultures, which is provide surveillance and critique ethic and solve or emerging value. Function of strong corporate cultures. Function of strong cultures is control system, immediate form of social control that influence employee decision and behavior. Social glue bonds people together, make them feel like part of the organizational experience. Sense making helps employee making sense of what's going on and why things happen. Point number 2, culture strength advantage depends on environment fit, no cut like adaptive culture. Lastly, organizational outcome is organizational performance and employees well-being. Content of organizational culture. First point, an organization culture is fancy, diverse subculture or fragmentation. Value exist within individual, not words unique. The second point, the relative ordering of shared value. Value that people within the organization have in common and placed near the top of their hierarchy value. Which organization have different culture content? A few dominant value. Example, there is efficiency and competitiveness. Example of Facebook is making difference, focus on impact, taking risks, be bold, and being entrepreneurial, moving fast. The third point is problem with measuring organization culture. Oversimplify diversity of possible value. Ignore share assumption, only be observing employee, analyzing their decision and debriefing then on their action. Would this assumption rise to the surface? Adopt an integration perspective and see when organization culture change it shift from unified condition to a new unified condition with only temporary ambiguity incorrect. Very subjective.
Moving on, I'm going to talk about the importance of organizational culture. One of the importance can be seen through the contingencies of organizational and the effectiveness. The effect of organizational culture strength on organizational performance is moderate. There are three main contingencies, which are ensuring culture is environment fit, avoid trying to level the corporate cults, and create an adaptive culture. The first one is ensuring the culture is environment fit. The benefits of a strong culture depend on whether its content is aligned with the external environment. For instance, companies that require an employee-centric culture in environments where business success depends mainly on employee talent, whereas an efficiency-focused culture may be more critical for companies in environments with strong competition. If the dominant values are compatible with the environment, then employees are more likely to engage in decisions and behaviors that will improve the organization's interaction. But when the dominant values are misaligned with the environment, a strong culture encourages decisions and behaviors that can undermine the organization's connection with its stakeholders. The second one is avoid strong cultures. Culture strength is not the level of a cult. Experts suggest that companies with very strong cultures, that is corporate cults, may be less effective than companies that moderately strong cultures. A reason why corporate cults may undermine organizational effectiveness is that they put people into mental models, which can withhold them from new opportunities and unique problems. The effect of these strong cultures is that people incorrectly define subtle misalignments between the organization's activities and the changing environment. Another reason why very strong cultures may be dysfunctional is that they suppress dissenting subcultures. Organizational leaders need to maintain not only a strong culture but also allow subcultural diversity. Subcultures encourage task-oriented conflict, which improve creative thinking and offer some level of ethical vigilance over the dominant culture. And the last one is to create an adaptive culture. An adaptive culture embraces change, creativity, open-mindedness, growth, and learning. Organizational leaders view an adaptive culture as an important ingredient for the organization's long-term success. Employees being able to recognize that the organization's survival and success depends on their ability to discover emerging changes in an environment and to adapt their own behavior to those changes is what adaptive culture looks like. In an adaptive culture, accepting to change extends to internal processes and roles. Employees believe that satisfying stakeholder needs require continuous improvement of internal work processes. They also recognize the importance of remaining flexible in their own work roles. Hence, the phrase "that's not my job" is only found in non-adaptive cultures. The next importance of organizational culture can be seen through organizational culture and business ethics. An organization's culture influences the ethical conduct on its employee. This makes sense because good behavior is driven by ethical values, and ethical values becomes embedded in an organization's dominant culture. Next, I'm going to talk about the changing and strengthening organizational culture. It is possible to change an organization's culture. However, doing so is not easy. I will explain 4 strategies that have had some success at altering and strengthening corporate cultures. The first one is the actions of founders and leaders. Traditionally, a company's founder usually forms an organization's culture. Organizational culture sometimes reflects the founder's personality. The founder is often an inspiring visionary who provides a compelling role models for others to follow. Secondly, aligning artifacts. Artifacts keep culture in place. Artifacts usually represent more than just the visible indicator of a company's culture. These systems and structures are artifacts, such as the workplace layout, reporting structure, office rituals, type of information distributed, and language that is reinforced and discouraged. Next, introducing culturally consistent rewards. Rewards are powerful artifacts. These actions reinforce a more disciplined and centralized performance-oriented culture. Last but not least, use attraction, selections, and socializations for cultural fit. A valuable way to strengthen and possibly change an organization's culture is to recruit and select job applicants whose values are compatible with the culture. The process of recruiting, selecting, and retaining applicants whose values are compatible with the organization's culture is explained by attraction, selection, attrition, or also known as ASA theory. ASA theory states that organizations have a natural tendency to attract, select, and retain people with values and personality characteristics that are consistent with the organization's character, resulting in a more homogeneous organization and a strong culture. Organizational socialization can be defined as the process by which individuals learn the values, expected behavior, and social knowledge necessary to assume their roles in the organization. This process can potentially change employee values to become more aligned with the company's culture. Organizational socialization is a process of both learning and adjustment. It is a learning process because newcomers try to make sense of the company's physical workplace, social dynamics, and strategic and cultural environment. Organizational socialization is also an adjustment process because individuals need to adapt to their new work environment. In an organization, there are 3 stages of socialization. The first stage is pre-employment stage. In this stage, the employee will learn about the organization and the job scope. They also need to build employment relationship and their expectation. The second stage is encounter stage. This is to test expectation against perceived realities. This is the stage in which newcomers test how well their pre-employment expectations fit realities. The third stage is role management. At this stage, it strengthens work relationship, resolve work non-work conflicts, and it also a stage where they can practice new role behavior. The last one is improving the socialization process. Companies have a tendency to exaggerate positive features of the job and not mentioning the undesirable elements. They want to attract as many job applicants as possible, which they assume will improve the selection choices. Unfortunately, this approach often ends badly. Those hired soon discover that the actual workplace does not match their expectation, resulting in reality shock and a broken psychological contract. Thus, a realistic job preview (RJP) offers a balance of positive and negative information about the job and work context. This balanced description of the company and work helps job applicants decide for themselves whether their skills, needs, and values are compatible with the job and organizations. Another way to improve is through socialization agents. Supervisors tend to provide technical information, performance feedback, and information about job duties. They also improve the socialization process by giving newcomers reasonably challenging first assignments, buffering them from excessive demands, helping them form social ties with coworkers, and generating positive emotions around their new work experience. Co-workers are also important socialization agents because they are easily accessible, can answer questions when problems arise, and serve as role models for appropriate behavior. New employees tend to receive this information and support when co-workers welcome them into their work team. Co-workers also aid the socialization process by being flexible and tolerant in their interactions with new hires. That's all from us. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. I will continue our discussion for topic 12, which is organizational change. Concept of change. Organizational change is the movement of an organization from its existing situation to more effective conditions. Change is also known as alterations of an organization's environment, structures, technologies, or people. Lewin's force field analysis model is the most popular change process developed by Kurt Lewin. This is an example Lewin's force field analysis model. This model has two sides, which are driving forces and restraining forces. The driving forces that push organization to a new state of affairs. This might include a new competitors or technologies involving workforce expectation or a host of other environmental changes. The other side is restraining forces that maintain the status quo. These restraining forces are commonly called resistant to change because they appear to block on the change process. The process of change has three phases that move an organization from an undesirable state through a difficult transition period to a desired new state. Lewin's change model emphasizes three steps for effective change, which are unfreezing, changing, and freezing. First step is unfreezing. This is the first step of change involved encouraging individuals to discard or abandon old behavior by supporting them to leave the status quo. Next is changing. The second step in the transformation process is where new attitudes, values, and behavior are substituted for the old one. Third step is refreezing. It is involves stabilizing the situation and encouraging long-term acceptance. There are four approaches to organizational change. First is action research approach. Along with introducing the force field model, Kurt Lewin recommends an action research approach to the change process. A problem-focused change process that combines action-oriented, changing attitude and behavior, and orientation, testing theory through data collections and analysis. For action research process, the main phases of action research consist of four stages. First is form-client-consultant relationship. Action research usually assumes that the change agent originates outside the system, such as consultant. So the process begins by forming the client-consultant relationship. Second stage is diagnose the need for change. Action research is a problem-oriented activity that carefully diagnoses the problem to determine the appropriate direction for the change effort. Organizational diagnosis relies on systematic analysis of the situation. It involves gathering and analyzing data about an ongoing system, including interviews and surveys of employees and others. Next is introduce intervention. This stage in the action discharge model applies one or more actions to correct the problem. It may include any of perspectives mentioned in this book, such as building more effective team, managing conflict, building a better organizational structure, or changing the corporate culture. Last is evaluate and stabilize change. Action research recommend evaluating the effectiveness of the interventions against the standard established in the diagnostic stage. Unfortunately, even when these standards are clearly stated, the effectiveness of an intervention might not be apparent for several areas or might be difficult to separate from other factors. Next approaches is appreciative inquiry approach. Appreciative inquiry tries to break out of the problem-solving mentality of traditional change management practice by reframing relationship around the positive and the possible. It searches for organizational or team strengths and capabilities and then applies that and knowledge for further success and well-being. Appreciative inquiry embraces five key principles. One of these is the positive principle, focusing on positive events and potential produce are more positive, effective, and enduring change. A second principle called the constructionist principle, take the position that conversation don't describe reality. Like how we perceive and understand the change process depend on the question we ask and language we use throughout the process. Third principle called the simultaneity principle, which state that inquiry and change are simultaneous, not sequential. The moment we ask questions of others, we are changing those people. A fourth principle called the poetic principle state that organizations are open book, so we have choice in how they may be perceived, framed, and described. The anticipatory principle, the fifth principle of appreciative inquiry, state that people are motivated and guided by the vision they see and believe in for the future. These are the 4D model of appreciative inquiry. These five principles lay the foundation for appreciative inquiries for this 4D process. The first one is discovery. Identify the positive element of the observed event or organization. Second is dreaming stage, which is by envisioning what might be possible in an ideal organization. The process shifts into the third stage called designing. Designing involves dialogue about what should be. In the final stage of appreciative inquiry, called delivering, also known as a discerning, participants establish specific objectives and directions for their own organization on the basis of their model of what will be. Next approaches is large group interventions approach. Appreciative inquiry can occur in small teams, but it is often designed to involve a large number of people. Appreciative inquiry is often identified as one of several large group organizational change interventions. Large group interventions adopt a whole system perspective of the change process. Similar to appreciative inquiry, large group intervention adopt a future-oriented positive focus rather than a past-oriented problem focus. For instance, a large group intervention typically held over a few days in which participants identify emerging trends and develop strategy for the organization to realize a potential under those future conditions. The last approaches is parallel learning structure, a highly participative social structure developed alongside the formal hierarchy and composed of people across organizational levels who apply the action research model to produce meaningful organizational change. Participants in parallel learning structure are sufficiently free from the constraint of the larger organization that they can effectively solve organizational issues. Okay, that's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter, Azrin Afiza. Thank you.
Why people resistant to change? The first reason because of direct cost. It's losing something of value due to the change. Then cost benefit analysis is negative rather than positive. For example, Malaysian government. Besides that, when introduced the change, managers are expected to delegate more power and responsibility to their staff. But the manager believes that this reform will give them less power and prestige. Second reason is not invented here syndrome. Employees sometimes oppose or even discreetly undermine organizational change initiative that originate as well. This reason is most apparent among employees who are usually responsible for the knowledge initiative. For example, information technology staff are more likely to risk implementing new technology championed by marketing of finance employees. Third point, fear of the unknown. The employees tend to assume the worst when they are unsure whether the change will have good or bad outcome. Uncertainty is associated with the lack of personal control, which is another source of negative emotion. However, this condition shift to the cost-benefit calculation of the change even further into negative the territory. Furthermore, breaking routines. Breaking routines means people are creatures of habit. They are typically resist that initiative that are required them to break those automate routines and to learn new patterns. It takes time for them to manage the new routines unless their new patterns of behavior are strongly supported and reinforced, or employers still to tend to revert to their past routine and habits. Next, incongruent organizational system. This is about rewards, information system, pattern of authority, career paths, selection criteria, and other system and structure are both rank and force of the organizational chain. When it's properly aligned, they are reinforce desire behavior, but when it's misaligned, they pull people back into their old attitude and behavior. Besides that, even enthusiastic employees lose momentum after failing to overcome the structure conference of the past. Last reason, incongruent teams dynamic. Incongruent team dynamics means team develop and enforce conformity to a set of norms that give behavior. However, conformity to existing team norms might discourage employees from accepting organizational change. For instance, organizational initiative to improve customer service may be the what by teams know that discourage the extra effort expected to serve the customer at this higher standard. Strategy for minimizing the resistance to change. First strategy is communication. Communication is priority and first strategy required for any organizational change. According to the survey, communication it can be considered the top strategy for engaged employees in the change process. Then the communication can improve the change process in two ways. For example, it's necessary to generate the urgency for change that we described previously, and communication minimize resistance to change by eliminating the future entropy, reducing fear of the unknown. Second strategy is learning. Learning is an important process. It's most organizational change initiative because employees need new knowledge and skill to fit the organization's evolving requirement. Then, it's not only help employees, but also help employees to perform better following the change. Third strategy, employees' involvement. Employees who participate in the discussion about the change tend to feel more personal and responsibility for its success implementation rather than being disinterested agents of someone else's decision. Furthermore, the word environment. The word environment is so complex that determine the best direction of the change effort required ideas and knowledge of many employees. First strategy is stress management. Organizational change is a stressful experience for the many people because of its threatened self-esteem and create uncertainty about the future. Therefore, communication on learning and employees' involvement can reduce some of the stress. However, research indicates that companies also need to introduce stress management practice to help employers cope with the change. Next strategy, negotiation. Negotiation is a form of influence that involves the promise of benefit research in exchange for the target person compliance which the influencer requests. This strategy potentially gains support from those who would otherwise lose out from the chain. However, negotiations usually produce employers which rather than committed to the change effort. Last strategy is caution. Caution includes a range of assertive influence behaviors such as persistently reminding people of their obligation, frequently monitoring behavior to ensure compliance, confronting people who do not change, and using threat of punishment to force compliance. Cross-culture and ethical issue in organization. First, cross-culture. One possible cross-culture limitation is that Western organizational change model as Lewin's force field analysis often assumes that change has a beginning and ending in a logical linear sequence. Another cross-culture issue with some organizational change intervention is the assumption that effective organizational change is necessarily punctuated by tension and over conflict. Indeed, some change intervention encourage such a conflict, but this direct confrontation view is incompatible with the culture that emphasizes harmony and equilibrium. This cross-culture, different sagas that are more contingency perspective is required for the organizational change to work effectively in this era. Ethical issue. First, ethical issue is the rise of violating individual privacy rights. The action research model is built on the idea of collecting information from the organizational members. Yet, this assumes that employees will provide personal information and reveal their emotion. They would not normally divulge. Second ethical issue is including increased management power over employees. This is because some activities potentially increase management power by including compliance and conformity in organizational members. For instance, action research is a system-wide activity that requires employees to participate rather than allowing them to get involved voluntarily. Third ethical concern is that some organizational change intervention undermine the individual self-esteem. The unphrasing process requires that participants discover their existing belief, sometimes including their own competence at certain tasks for the interpersonal relation. Organizational change usually more difficult than it initially seems. Yet, the dilemma is that most organizations operate in hyper-fast environment that demand continued and rapid adaptation. Organizations rise and gain a competitive advantage by mastering the complex dynamic of moving people through the continual process of change as quickly as the external environment is changing. That's all. Thank you.